So recently I've been poking around my retro device collection and I came across this little plastic box. So I have a little question for you. What is this? Well, some people watching the video may call this a pocket computer, and they'll be right. It is a pocket computer. And when I found this, it got me feeling nostalgic for the era when Microsoft has been releasing the Windows Mobile OS, aka the phone-based version of the Windows. Yeah, Microsoft has been making these back in the day, and they were really popular. I mean, 20 years ago, every user that has been having such a device like this, like Asus MyPal, and has been having the Windows Mobile OS on it, could run PowerPoint, Excel, Word, or any other desktop applications just on this tiny box. That was unheard of at the time. But then, it all vanished somewhere. How and why? Well, we'll discuss this today. But before we're gonna do this, let me introduce myself. My name is Peter Rigor, and you're VMflame Corporate YouTube channel. If you're new here, I'm really glad to see you. And if you already are following my channel, I highly apologize for me not making videos for another 2 months. Yeah, as you may possibly see, I'm in a new apartment. Hallelujah. And now I can finally slap the VMflame logo on my entrance door. Yeah, my budget's not that high. Anyway, don't forget to follow my channel, put a like, and share the video with your friends, because it actually means a lot to me. So now, let's dive into the history of this. Now, not really this Asus MyPal, but the Windows Mobile. So now to begin discovering the story of this Windows Mobile sort of thing, we need to dive in back to the 90s. Yeah, to the time when Steve Jobs was not at Apple, and Microsoft has been gaining huge success because of the Windows 95 sales. Yeah, aka their cross-platform strategy worked. Now, Microsoft actually is famous for making the cross-platform strategy, but there is a lot more to the story. Let's dive in. At the time, the Microsoft was a huge player on the mass software market. Apple was not really making any useful products in the software world, since Apple has been manufacturing morally outdated new message pads. Yes, they were definitely cool, they had a cool, striking new design, and cool features, and they can possibly be a cool addition to your Windows hardware collection apparently, but they were only useful for that time. In fact, Steve Jobs will come back to Apple in 1997, and one of the first things he will destroy is the new project. Well, let's come back to Microsoft anyway. The only player in the market which could possibly outscore Microsoft in sales was BlackBerry, yet the Microsoft had still one trick under their sleeve. Contrary to the BlackBerry guys who manufactured their devices to install all of their software on them and firmware, Microsoft released their software to be installed on multiple platforms, aka cross-platform strategy, the software production strategy which Microsoft uses since the very beginning of their life. Microsoft had the same strategy with their desktop software, and their competitor they were about to destroy was the big fruit company, yeah, Apple, but thankfully they did it, because the daddy Steve Jobs came back to the play. The Microsoft software success was not only in the small tiny mobile phone world. The main target for Microsoft at that time were the pocket computers. These pocket computers had the minimized version of Microsoft Windows software, optimized for smaller screens and lower processor powers, which was called Windows Mobile. Technically, with every major Windows version release, Microsoft has been releasing the new Microsoft Mobile version. In fact, the Microsoft Mobile, and one other very unsuccessful project made by Microsoft's team, the Zune, gave eventually inspiration to the Windows Phone OS development. Well, we'll talk about that in just a bit. So now we need to get back to 2007, the year when the entire world has been fascinated with Apple's iPhone product, with its functionality and ease of use. The styluses, which we were addicted to apparently, are no longer needed. The pointer device is basically your finger now. The company CEOs all over the world started to switch to the sensor screen era. One of the first companies to do so was the Android. But there was still one bold, crazy and energetic CEO who still makes me smile and grab some inspiration from him. Although this man stood behind some of the Microsoft's best products, such as Windows XP or Windows 7, he made still one big and fatal mistake. He wanted to stay in the old form factor for longer. For the next bit part in our today's story, we need Steve Ballmer. Yeah, the same dude who released the meme for decades.
Developers, 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 developers. Developers, 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 developers. Yes!
When Steve Jobs released the iPhone, he united all of the world's standards of the mobile software development to one common denominator. When Apple released the first SDK for the iPhone OS, yeah, the insanely old version of the iOS basically, the apps became more united, had a lot more in common in layout but had diverse features. That's actually when Apple introduced the App Store. In case you want to find out more about all of the shenanigans which happened at Apple's development team, make sure to check out the iOS evolution video I released earlier. Yeah, go check it out later after watching this one. Anyway, the iPhone had a shape of a simple rounded rectangle with only 4 buttons, 1 switch, and 2 ports. The round-shaped home button, which was responsible for waking up the device from sleep and going to the home screen, was nicely placed on the bottom of the device. The sleep/lock button in the shape of elongated oval was on top of the device. On the side, we had 2 round-shaped buttons for rolling up and down and a mute switch. As for ports, we had the 32-pin connector and a headphone jack. So basically, all of the phones later followed relatively the same guideline: the lock button, rolling buttons, home button, charging input, and a headphone jack. Well, before the arrival of the iPhone, phones were really different. They had different shapes, configurations, designs, form factors, screen dimensions, and resolutions. So since the phones had a lot more different than in common, the software development for the phones was a really hard task. Sure thing, you could install some third-party applications on your phone, but not everywhere. There were so many configurations of the processors and other internals in the phone that it simply were not able to run some apps from specific phone models due to intense processor and battery power restrictions. Keep in mind, you still gotta make your app as light as possible since your phone is not constantly connected to a power grid. You should actually go with it and use it on a go. After we took a brief look on the phone market situation before Apple's iPhone introduction, we can now have a look on the 2008 situation from a different standpoint. Since the phones had a control which was fully powered by the magic of a sensor on your finger, the keyboard should now also be a sensor keyboard. We no longer have the physical keyboards just like the BlackBerry pocket computers did. The keyboard stayed out for some bigger computers like tablets, laptops, and desktops. But again, there was still one big brain power which didn't agree with the newer trends and still don't want to delete the earlier standards. Again, here we need this Steve Ballmer apparently. His main concern was that the business people needed a physical keyboard, since it's more accessible and has more functionality. Technically, he was bold and running right. So the sensor keyboard now doesn't require any additional surface in the body of the device to be placed. It's an on-screen keyboard. On the flip side, the sensor keyboards take the half of the screen even now, which is not really comfortable in the first place. Just for me to back up my words, here's a part of Steve Ballmer's 2008 interview.
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine. Now, it may sell very well or not. We have our strategy. We've got great Windows mobile devices in the market today. You can get a Motorola Q phone now for $99. It's a very capable machine. It'll do music. It'll do internet. It'll do email. It'll do instant messaging. So I kind of look at that and I say, well, I like our strategy. I like it a lot.
Just for those who are interested in watching the full version of this interview, I left the link for the video recording in description. I highly encourage you to watch this video because this video is also a huge and important part of the computer history. Well, now let's get back to the main video. So as we will see later, Steve Ballmer and Microsoft with him still wanted to show people that physical keyboards are cool. Yeah, that basically was one of the key selling points, and they can be properly integrated into smartphones. Technically, Microsoft partially proved that later when they began releasing the Surface tablet line, but this will happen in a couple of years. So now we're in 2010 when Microsoft is about to launch their next big failure, the Microsoft Kin. The Microsoft Kin was a really expensive project for Microsoft, and a means of invested time and a means of invested money. Microsoft invested 2 years and about $1 billion developing the Kin platform itself. The first purchase Microsoft did as a part of the Microsoft Kin development is the acquisition of Dan German Incorporated, the company which stood behind the very cool hardware and human design for the Kin and some of the future Microsoft products. The Kin line itself had 2 models, the Kin 1 and Kin 2. The 1 had a 4GB storage, 5MP rear camera, yeah, no face camera at all people, and a 2.6-inch display, as well as 2 had an 8GB storage, 8MP rear camera, and a 3.4-inch displays. For the RAM, both lines had 256MB DDR RAM, which, honestly speaking, was really small for even a 2010 smartphone standard. The weirdest thing is that the entire device was powered by the finger. It was even compatible with multi-touch gestures, as well as it had the keyboard which did not appear on the screen. You needed to open up the physical keyboard, which nicely was placed behind the display, yeah, nicely, you got me right, to enter some text, which, keep in mind the size of the pocket computer, was really ached up. But that was just the beginning of the problems. The Microsoft has been positioning the Kin as the smartphone, meanwhile the Kin merely was an amped-up feature phone, simply not allowing any third-party apps to be installed on the device. The sales for the Kin started in April 2010, and the sales were so poor that the line has been discontinued just in June or mid-July 2010. Just so we can better understand how real the situation was egged up, here are the words of Rep Enderle, the principal analyst of the Enderle Group to eWeek magazine. The Kin was a mistake from day one. The extra time they took to convert the Kin from the Sidekick platform to Windows CE made about a year and a half late to market, and the merger added another year and a half. That's 1.5 to 3 years late depending on when you start the clock. So if taking the Rob Enderle's words into account, we can basically say that the Microsoft has been doing bad with the Microsoft Kin project simply because of bad timing. If Microsoft Kin came up to the market in 2007 or 2008, maybe it could have some better sales, but definitely not the leading points in a sales market, because we still had one big ass company which already released their iPhone. And anyway, it's just some assumptions, I can't really say. Share your opinions in the comment section. So, this was one of the Microsoft's biggest fails in their entire life, but the Steve Ballmer is a tough nut to crack, buddy, and that's why just 4 months later, in October 2010, he kicks in with a brand new project, the Windows Phone. If you don't know what this is, well, I'm glad you asked. The Windows Phone software was a logical continuation of the Windows Mobile, the same ideology but a lot more features. Now, contrary to the Windows Mobile, Windows Phone has a more landed feeling. Namely, it's a lot closer to something handy and light than its ancestor. Also, that's kind of where the Microsoft's Metro design started, which was inspired by the Zune HD, and was brought later into Windows 8. A home screen is presented as a desk with plates of different sizes. Some of them were linked to applications, some of them were working as notification widgets, and others have been working as advanced widgets. One of the coolest features of the Windows Phone OS was the hubs. These were the tiles on desktop, which have combined the locally stored photos on your device, as well as your photos or your friends' photos on such social networks as Instagram, Facebook, Windows Live, yeah, that was a thing back in the day, and Twitter. From these tiles, user could directly react to a photo and comment it right from their desktop. Overall, Microsoft released the 4 major versions of Windows Phone, totaling of 6 internal updates. It all started with Windows Phone 7 with announcement in February of 2010 and initial release date on November 8, 2010. And the last Windows Phone version was the NT 10.0 or Windows 10 Mobile with announcement in November 2015 and release date of March 17, 2016. The Microsoft ended the official support for Windows 10 Mobile on January 14, 2020. But the entire idea of the phone was pretty amazing. In 2015, Microsoft even cooperated with Nokia to combine great hardware and cheap out on in-house hardware manufacturing. But there were 2 big problems, aka nails in coffin, and mistakes that Microsoft did when trying to start the heartbeat in the body of an already dead Windows Mobile project: timing and third-party software. At the beginning, it was almost impossible to download third-party, aka non-approved apps on your Windows Phone device. Later, the situation became a little better, but this problem was still a big concern. The Google Disk app, for example, and all Google's applications, including YouTube, were still not supported by the Windows Phone OS. So Microsoft did a lot of experience in the world of mobile computing, had a lot of flops and fails. But, let's say honestly, they successfully overcame all the challenges, and now they're making the insanely cool Surface Pro devices. No, I'm not a Microsoft fan, but let's be honest. The Surface Pro is still a pretty logical continuation of the entire shenanigans which have been happening with the Windows Phone or the Windows Mobile. And this experience, which Microsoft had with the Windows Mobile, although it's a bad experience, is still a valuable piece of experience not only for Microsoft, but also for the entire world. But the most important thing is that it's a very valuable part of the Silicon Valley's history. And in the words of late Steve Jobs, it's still one more thing out there. Yeah, Steve Ballmer is a funny guy. As we've seen several minutes ago, Microsoft fully suspended development of the Phone OS in 2015. But is it truly the moment when Microsoft fully suspended their developments in a phone platform or mobile platforms? Well, not really, because just look at the Windows Surface Pro. These devices are not the best, but let's be honest, they are pretty functional and they're pretty usable. In fact, they run the full desktop version of Microsoft Windows, and we can still use them as typical tablets, but with desktop OS, which is actually pretty amazing. Yeah, as an Apple fan, I will say I don't like Microsoft because I'm an Apple fan from the very beginning of my life, but still, if iPad would have been running the macOS, that would have been actually pretty amazing. So, let's be honest, the Microsoft Surface Pro or any device from the Surface line can be called as a pretty logical successor of the Windows Mobile, aka Windows Phone OS. And to be honest, I think Microsoft actually had a win as this. Yeah, Microsoft kind of seemed dead in the phone industry, but then they magically revived and started making these awesome Surface devices. So, can we call this a win? I think yeah. If you have a different opinion, write down in the comment section. And now, I want to say thank you to every single person who watched my video. In fact, I worked really hard to make this video because this is the first video on my channel which had a script. Thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget to follow my channel, put a like and share the video with your friends. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and also attend my VMflame and VMhelp websites. If you want to get support with your Mac devices, go ahead on VMhelp and read the support articles. So, thank you for watching, and see you next time. Not for several months, I promise. Hey Peter, what about the Infectix, the original Scambuster video getting over 1,000 views on your YouTube channel?